this is my theory. This I think that we're shifting in humanity, and this is part of the process where we start to look at death differently, and we start to transfer our memory from one life to another and start to build on that memory.
Yeah, I agree. I think that, first of all, unpacking this idea of ancient cultures having more knowledge about certain things than we have now is part of conquest. And we have to understand that these cultures have been taken over. And, when that happens, the new culture that comes in just tries to eliminate all the belief systems and understandings and knowledge from the previous culture. But, the fact that we now have sort of a way to store all of this information allows us to go dig it back up and really see that there are certain cultures that have studied this. They had a different attitude about the transition through death. They had the ability to, have other beliefs about it, which allowed them exploration in the mystical and in the imaginary, and then the ability to codify that and turn it into rituals and understandings that could be passed on. And that became very important for their culture. The culture we live in now is fundamentally Judeo-Christian. And the Judeo-Christian culture has a very clear mythology around how to treat the idea of life and death and the associations with it, because every culture is asking the questions. But one of the beauties of studying other cultures is that you can actually see there are a lot of different opinions about this. And I think a lot of other cultures have a much more sophisticated understanding and expanded understanding around death. And so if we want to go into the Egyptian cultures or the, ancient Chinese cultures, ancient, what would be now, Eurasia to East Asian cultures, they have a much more expanded understanding. The Tibetan cultures have a much more expanded understanding. And in that, we can see what resonates with us. I think one of the big things for me is that I don't think there's only one story for us. I think every soul is here for a different purpose, and every soul is here to experience something else. So I think some get reincarnated, some don't. I think some move on to a version of the afterlife that's been described already that we understand and can relate to. Others don't. I think some move on to stuff that we've never even thought of, never even spoken, never even shared, and that have only seen in vision, and other people have attested to that. And so we have to embrace this idea that we know very little about this. It's a place of exploration. I would embrace that exploration. It's not a morbid concept at all, because you're really celebrating life. You're celebrating consciousness. You're celebrating source. You're going deep into what it means to be alive, and you're not getting stuck at the bookends of the way that we think of time. We're not getting stuck at the birth process, and we're not getting stuck at the death process. And I agree with the idea of being able to transfer memories, transfer the understandings of what we went through in this experience. We see a lot of people that live their life having a tremendous context from other lives, tremendous context, and unbelievable connection, factual, historic, real connection to events and places that they had never experienced before in this life itself. And then, so I think we just have to embrace that. We have to get really interested in what other cultures thought about this, and we need to expand our horizons. Then on the part about this, about near-death experience, I've had my own NDEs, and one of them was early on in my apprenticeship, and that experience was unbelievable. And it's one of the best teachings and amazing experiences of my life. I was fully conscious. There was no break in lucidity. I was fully sober. It happened at 10:30 in the morning. There were no other plants involved. Dude, it was unbelievable. And it became the foundation for my spiritual teachings for the next 10 years. As I unpacked that experience in ayahuasca ceremonies and in dietas and going through, all of the trials and tribulations of a traditional apprenticeship. But what had happened was that I had falciparum malaria. And the malaria, when it hatches in your body, it incubates in your red blood cells. It bursts the red blood cells as it comes out, and as it then goes and lays more eggs. And when that happens, you lose your red blood cells that carry oxygen, right? So I was basically fine, except for the fact that my blood was now so thin of red blood cells that I couldn't carry enough oxygen to oxygenate my body. And so I'm just there breathing normally, and then I'm there gasping for air and kind of taking these really big breaths, and you don't feel like you're being oxygenated at all. And I'm just looking around going like, I think something's systemically wrong here. And then I start feeling the organ system shut off, and then pretty soon, it's not like I have this experience where a transition happens. On the contrary, it's a continuous experience, only immediately I'm not in my body anymore. And I'm in a field. This is a field. It's a field of consciousness. It's a field of energy. It's a field of sacred geometry, and it's a field of spirit. It's a field of all of it at the same time.
Mhm.
And it is filled with everything, literally everything. If you name it, it was in there. It was unbelievable. It was like the blueprints of physical reality. It had every human in there. I mean, you name it, it had everything. It had every fish in there. It had every algae in there. It had every bacteria in there. It had everything in there. It was unbelievable. It was like a mainframe of all data. And I was just in it. And then I start moving through it. And as I move through it, my whole life unpacks. Like it unpacks like nanosecond by nanosecond by nanosecond. I have no idea how long I was there. As everything unpacks, I see everything as a integral part of consciousness and an integral part of being alive. Like it was purposeful. It wasn't just like, dude, it was everything. It was every blade of grass in the trillions I had ever passed in a car going along a freeway. It was everything. Then all of that becomes this like field of light. It all kind of like it came apart into this field of pure light, and the field of pure light becomes this omnidirectional space that I'm in the middle of, and it's moving me in a direction towards this ultimate like end point. And I get about what would be like the equivalent, and it took what seemed like hours, right? And hours and hours, and it was beautiful and it was amazing, dude. And I did not need food. I did not need air. I did not need body. I was 100% clear in consciousness. And I'm going to the end of the tunnel of white light. I get to the end and it's just massive. It's massive and it's dense and it's pulsating and it's alive and it's source and it's consciousness and it's real and it knows I'm there and I know that it's there and we are of the same energies, but there is this differentiation between this other light and the sort of the epicenter of me. And I just tell it, I'm not ready to go. There's so much more I have to do here in earth consciousness. Send me back to my body. And I literally say, send me back to my body. And out of the light forms into what looks like a catcher's mitt, like in baseball, only a little bit rounder and massive. And this was not a gentle thing. That light shoots out of that density and it hits consciousness. It hits me. And I remember screaming like this thing that took hours and hours and hours, what seemed like maybe even like eternity to go through, sends me back into my body immediately. And I pop up in the bed in the city of Iquitos, like awake, and there's a group of family members all around me and they're all crying. I'm dead. They think I'm dead. You know, I've been out for a long time. They don't know exactly how long in terms of clock time, but enough for them all to realize I'm completely dead. They don't know what to do. And now I've been reborn. They don't know what to do even more. They're looking at me in disbelief, telling me I'm dead. And I'm like, no, clearly I'm not dead. Look at me. Look, I'm talking to you. I am not dead. They think the dead had been revived and now they're freaking out even worse, right? It's like a physical human zombie ghost thing talking to them. I had to slow them down and convince them out of their hysterics to carry me to a taxi and get me to the hospital. It was unbelievable. It was truly unbelievable. And I remember every second of that experience still to the day.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that was one of the most teaching experiences I've ever had. And I think that we have to embrace those because they're showing us so much more experientially than what it is to be in the confines of the normal physical. And through those experiences, I realized that we do live 100% beyond the nature of the body. And so there isn't any reason for fear in the shedding. And then I think as like I said to the light to send me back to my body, if I'm ready and conscious for my next steps, and I know what those are, I think you can tell that light, it's like an infinite portal. You can tell it, you know, I'm ready to be human again. You can tell it that you're ready to go into the astral. You can tell it that you're ready to be, you know, part of star systems. You could be anything. You could go past the known universe at that point. And I think it's wide open. I think it's blue ocean and we need to embrace it. It was wild. And I think there's a lot to explore there.